Thank you very much, Professor Aman Wirakarta Kusuma. I think it's now our time to listen to the very rare experience coming from our guest lecturer today, His Excellency Ambassador Tantowi Yahya. Bapak Tantowi Yahya, where are you right now, Pak?
I'm now in Jakarta.
Oh, in Jakarta. Okay. So I was thinking about the time like between Indonesia and New Zealand, but since you are in Jakarta, okay, so it should be fine with the time. Okay. Bapak Tantowi Yahya, I think some is here now. Okay.
Thank you, Ibu Yulita, for giving me time to speak. First of all, first and foremost, good morning to everyone here. Special morning wishes to Professor Roy Sambo and Pak Aman Wirakarta Kusuma, and of course everyone that joins this morning session. It's great to be here. It's a big honor for me to be invited in this very prestigious event, very prestigious forum where I can meet eye to eye, though not in a direct meeting with you all, the leaders and the future leaders of Indonesia in all aspects of life, in all fields of business. So nothing really pleases me than meeting you virtually this morning. First, Ibu Yulita, I would like to correct what you just said in the beginning. I'm no longer Indonesian ambassador to New Zealand. I've completed my ambassadorial post on the 31st of December last year, after completing my terms for almost 5 years in New Zealand. So I was Indonesian ambassador to New Zealand and aggregated to 4 island countries in the Pacific, namely Samoa, Kingdom of Tonga, Cook Islands, and Norway. But as of 1st of January 2020, I have been so to say, a bigger job by the president to be the first Indonesian roving ambassador to the Pacific. So roving ambassador is actually a special envoy of the president for special purpose, special issues, or for special regions. Now, following our growing interest towards the Pacific in all aspects, and following our increasing maneuver in a very positive way in the Pacific, the President Jokowi then entrusted me to be the first Indonesian roving ambassador, or his special envoy to the Pacific. Pacific is a very small region in terms of economy. It's a very large area of regions comprising more than 28 countries, big and small, and most of them are island countries, and they are very prone to climate change, sustainability as such. But regardless, the very least number of people that live in some of those countries, they are sovereign, and some of them are members of United Nations. And this is the reasons why we need to engage them closer rather than much closer rather than what we did in the past. So being a special envoy or roving ambassador to the Pacific, I can live, Mbak Lita, I can work everywhere because it's attached to me no matter what I'm doing right now. But as you know, the borders are still closed, especially in the Pacific. So there is no way for me to do roving or muter-muter in the Pacific, but instead, due to the help of technology, I now become Zooming ambassador. So almost every day, I do Zooming with many stakeholders in the Pacific, conveying our messages, conveying the greetings from the people of Indonesia and also from the leaders of our country, with the hope that we will become much closer than we were in the past. Because there is a term, tak kenal maka tak sayang. Yeah, they don't know us, then they don't really love us. So my job right now is to make all the people in the Pacific know Indonesia much better than they did in the past. We have so many capitals, so to say, to engage the Pacific. Not many people know, not many people aware, Pak Aman, that actually Indonesia is also part of the Pacific. If you look at the map, 6 of our provinces in the eastern parts of Indonesia are geographically located in the Pacific. Look at where Papua, West Papua, Nusa Tenggara, Maluku, Maluku Utara, and also Northern Sulawesi, or even Gorontalo location. If you look at the map, they are actually located in the Pacific. Hence, we have absolute truth to say that we are part of the Pacific countries because of the positions. Now look at deeper into the demography of our people that live in the eastern parts of Indonesia. If you criticize me on the position of Nusa Tenggara Timur, which is not actually located in the Pacific, I can say that you are right. But look at the culture, look at the way of life of those people in the Nusa Tenggara Timur or NTT. They are part of the Pacific. Look at their skin, look at their hair, and look at the cultures. It's very much resemble to those of the Pacific countries or Pacific nations. And also look at the Northern Sulawesi, look at also Gorontalo. The way of life, the culture of those people living there are actually resembling those of the people that live in the Pacific. So geographically and demographically, Indonesia itu sah. We are legitimate to be called part of the Pacific, geographically and demographically. But sadly speaking, ever since we proclaimed as independent nations back in 1945, we never capitalize these facts. We are proud and we are happy to be associated with Asia, and we are always happy to be called ASEAN nation, which is right, and nothing wrong with that. And actually, we are one of the giants in the ASEAN side. Now, I would like to invite everybody to look at the maps. If you look at the position of Indonesia on the eastern part, we are flanked by 2 big oceans. So on the east, Pacific Ocean, and then on the west is the Indian Ocean. That's the position of Indonesia that makes our country very, very unique. So we can be adaptive to the dynamic in the ASEAN countries. And this is what we have been doing for many, many years since we proclaimed our independence. But now let's play in the Pacific because we are also part of the Pacific. So when people say that the front terrace of Indonesia is overlooking the Indian Ocean, and then the back terrace is overlooking the Pacific Oceans. So please support me in my project to claim Indonesians being part of the Pacific. Now, what is the use of being recognized part of the Pacific? A lot, ladies and gentlemen, a lot. Having brothers and sisters everywhere in the world will be helpful, especially in times of not hardship or difficulty, but in times of when we need help from our people, from the people in the world, then we have brothers and sisters. So the people that live in Samoa, in Tonga, in Fiji, Vanuatu, and elsewhere are actually Melanesian and Polynesian people, and those who live in the Marshall Islands, all the people that live in the atoll islands, they are Micronesia. So in the Pacific, there are 3 big races: Melanesian, Polynesians, and Micronesia. And we have all those. We have all those. Our Papuan brothers and sisters and Nusa Tenggara Timur are actually Melanesians. Our brothers and sisters from Ambon, Maluku are actually Polynesians. And our brothers for example, from Northern Sulawesi are actually Micronesia. So we have all those. Again, I would like to repeat what I said. 100% Indonesia is part of the Pacific. Now, by being part of the Pacific, of course, we create a new market. Yeah, we create a new market, and it's beneficial for both sides. Pacific is a very small it's a very small economy. A total of over 30 countries combined, that it constitutes only less than 50 million people. You can imagine, less than 50 million people. That already includes Australia and New Zealand. So from the perspective of market size, if you are an investor, if you are a trader, if you are dealing with a region of only 50 million people or so, of course, it's not interesting. It's not interesting at all. Why should I deal with a region which is so far away from where I am, and the market is very, very small, and the economic strength is relatively small compared to ours? Now, this is the opportunity for us to be part of the Pacific, to make it more attractive market. If Indonesia jumped into the Pacific, then the Pacific has an additional population of 270 million people. So 270 million people plus 50 million or so, then we are talking about 320 or even 350 million people. As a region, it becomes attractive. It becomes very promising. And then Indonesia, being the largest part of the Pacific, of course, promises a lot of opportunities for the world. I'm talking about the investors that would like, investors from the world that like to do investments in the Pacific. Now, this is what I have been offering up until now. So the first day where I was an ambassador in New Zealand, that was my project. I want to be call of the Pacific, and we want Indonesia to be contributive to the market of the Pacific. Because if Indonesia is regarded as a part of the Pacific, then the world will see this region as a lucrative market, very promising regions, and with a very strong economic demand, because Indonesia, Australia is there. Now, for Indonesia itself, we create another market. So despite of a very tiny size, 50 million people or 30 countries something are still a market. We often neglect this, Pak Aman, because we, as a business people, so to say, as a marketer, we are only dealing with big economy like China, like with India, America. We neglect small region and small countries. And you know what happens? Our fellow ASEAN nations, they use them. They go to those countries and make business, and don't talk about China. China, they go everywhere. Well, there is a live, there is a China there. Well, there is a live, there is a Chinese product there. And we don't do that, sadly speaking. We have a lot of advantages. I like to see Pak Sates more is smiling when I said, when there is a live, China is there. We have a lot of advantages that those countries don't have. First is proximity. Indonesia is relatively much closer to the Pacific than China, India, Europe, America. We are closer. So we have the benefit of the easy word to say that is we can have cheap shipping costs, because we are close to them. If you look at the position of Sulawesi Utara, Maluku, Ambon, our provinces in the eastern part of Indonesia, you can imagine if they do export, they export their commodities to the Pacific only hours away. And the islands in the eastern parts of Indonesia, which I start calling the Pacific Indonesia, have a lot to offer. Not only commodities, but also tourism, but also other economic opportunities. And distance-wise, they are very, very close to the Pacific. You can imagine if we can export mangoes, we can export papaya from one of the islands in the eastern parts of Indonesia. We can capture those markets easily because of the proximity. I can also imagine, Prof, if you, North Sulawesi, can start exporting your fishery products to the Pacific. They need them so much. So what is unique from the countries in the Pacific, despite of being surrounded by oceans, they are always lacking of fishery products. Where do they go? Most of them to China. And the local markets do not have enough food, do not have enough seafood. So this is the big opportunity for us. Second, another advantage that those countries that normally do business with the Pacific don't have is cultural background. I told you in the beginning, we are coming from the same culture. We are demographically the same with those people that live in the Pacific. So being brothers and sisters, of course, I'll give benefits to you. I like doing business with somebody that I know. I like doing business that have family relationship, things like that. And this is what Indonesia have. And China, Japan, Europe, America, India, they don't have those. They don't have those. So we are in a position actually. We are in a very good position to tap this untamed market. Now, for the last 5 years, I did my very best, back up my fully qualified staff, both in Jakarta, in Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and other ministries in Indonesia, and my own diplomats. We tap the market of the Pacific. Now, having Indonesia as part of the Pacific as a background, we managed to make the first ever, I'm saying the first ever exhibition of trade, investment, and tourism, which we call the Pacific Exposition. So never before such exhibition was organized in the Pacific, never before. Australia, being the biggest country in the region, didn't have a big dream of engaging the countries in the Pacific and make them into a new marketplace. We had that. So we introduced the concept of Pacific Exposition being a new marketplace for the whole Pacific countries. This is the time, this is the place, this is the forum where they can offer and sell all the products from commodities to high-tech products. We managed to make it for the very first time on July 2019, participated by 28 countries. We projected 30 countries, and those who finally joined us, 28. The other two, due to political reason as such, which is to me is bloody nonsense, and they didn't participate. And the first Pacific Exposition attended by 5,000 people physical. We did it at the convention hall in Auckland. So we managed to get the attention of more than 5,000 people attending the exhibition. And we managed to make a pledge transactions of 1 trillion rupiah, or 70 million US dollars. So never before people had optimistic that actually this market is big. I mean, for a 3-day exhibition, we managed to make the transactions of 70 million people, or equals to 1 trillion rupiah. And what made me so happy, we managed to invite 15 state-owned enterprises to participate in the first ever exhibition. They didn't sell at the time because what we offer are actually expensive products, like weapons, like railway, like train wagons, and then like airplane. Of course, they didn't buy them. But what do we get? We get is the impression that Indonesia is such a big and developed country. So before we did the exhibition, in the mind of the Pacific people, the most developed, the most technologically developed country in the region has always been Australia. But after we exhibited the products from the state-owned enterprises, from airplane to train to ships, submarines, my God, they became speechless. I never know that Indonesia is so developed. I never know that Indonesia is so progressed. No sale, of course, because our products were too expensive. But you know what happened 2 years after that? PT Inka, or the railway, the railways companies in Indonesia managed to make a sale to Australia and New Zealand. It's a big sales that they did, and that's the result of the exhibitions. And most of the power plant in New Zealand today are imported from Cilengsi. We have a factory in Cilengsi. So if there is no product from Cilengsi, New Zealand itu gelap, because the electric power is coming from us. So Bapak, Ibu, dan saudara-saudara sekalian, in a nutshell, like explained by Pak Aman in the beginning, it's not easy to deal with small countries like New Zealand and the small Pacific countries. New Zealand, because they implement a lot of requirements. I'm not saying it's non-tariff barrier, but the fact is that with the small Pacific Island countries, our issue is the distance. It's so far away, and there is no regular ships that reach those islands. That's an issue because connectivity has become a big issue in the Pacific countries. But with New Zealand, we don't have that issue. But they implement a very strict regulation, which we don't say non-tariff barrier, but actually this is non-tariff barrier. It's not easy to convince them. So Australia is more relaxed when doing business or trade with Indonesia. That's why we always manage to score a big amount of transaction with Australia over the years. So the solutions to penetrate a market like Australia, don't sell commodity products, because commodity products is a buyer's market. We have to play in the seller's market. We have to produce and we have to sell products that they cannot produce, that they cannot make, like the power plant, the trafo, and then sophisticated products like computer products, something like that. So we have to play in this area, and this is in relevance with the 4O industry that we are campaigning right now. If we still dealing or trading the commodity like coffee, chocolate beans, and other commodities first, they control the market because they can get better products at better price from Central American countries, from Africa, and then from countries like India, and the price are relatively better than ours. So it's hard to compete in those fields. But when we talk about car, Indonesia is great in producing automotive. Okay, we really have to work hard to penetrate the market. Airplanes, weapons, trains, wagons, as such. So that is the future of Indonesian trade with the Pacific countries. I guess, Mbak Yuli, I talked too much already.
No, actually, no. Very interesting.
Very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Then I continue if I still have time. Then continuing the success of the first Pacific Expo back in 2019, we made our second Pacific Exposition. We call the second Pacific Exposition, but due to the pandemic, we were forced to do it virtually. So doing it virtually, Mbak Yulita, gave us what you call it, negativisms that we cannot score a good sale because, there is no sensing. People cannot touch and see the products. But to our surprise, we had the visitors doubled. So more than 12,000 attended our 4-day virtual exhibition. And we managed to score a transaction of 1.5 trillion rupiah. So there is an increase. That increase of over 30%. So in US dollar, it's about 100 million US dollar or 150 million New Zealand dollars. And the success of the first and the second Pacific Expo make the position of Indonesia to where we are right now. So we are now perceived as friend for good, friend that brings business, friend that brings a real deal. So there is no hesitations that Indonesia is part of the Pacific, not only culturally but also economically. Indonesia has become integral part of the Pacific. Now, what we want to do in the future, Prof. Roy, Aman, and friends, ladies and gentlemen, is to connect the eastern parts of Indonesia with the Pacific through tourism route. Yeah, the future of tourism is what you call cruise ship. So we want, because people are forecasted to have more time. They want to enjoy the regions. in a very luxurious ships or cruise. And Pacific has always been interesting destinations. But over the years, what is offered by the Pacific has always been the same destinations. So Australia, New Zealand, Vanuatu, Fiji, okay. So for those who have done it twice, probably they won't do it 3 times. So we offer a new destination, the Pacific Indonesia. So it is in the process right now of connecting the eastern parts of Indonesia with the whole Pacific. So later, when people want to explore the Pacific by cruise, they have options. They want to take the Pacific destination, or they want to explore or enjoy the new Pacific, or we call the Pacific Indonesia. So by doing that, we can include, some parts of Australia which have never been visited, like Perth, like Tasmania. They are there, and then we combine them with Jayapura, with Biak, with Maluku, and also with North Sulawesi. So our homework right now is to build the infrastructure. So the seaports that we have must be able to accommodate the big ships that sails from normally from Sydney or from Auckland, New Zealand. So they will come to eastern parts of Indonesia, enjoy Morotai, enjoy Raja Ampat, enjoy Ambon being the city of music, and enjoy the culture of Indonesia. So actually, we are talking a big opportunity for Indonesia, even though I'm talking about the eastern parts of Indonesia. So when the market is formed, proximity is there, what we have in mind is that our export to the Pacific countries is through eastern parts of Indonesia. So it can be from Biak, Jayapura, Manado, or elsewhere in the eastern parts of Indonesia. Then Indonesia is connected economically with the Pacific. I think that's all from me, Mbak Yulita.
Yes. Thank you very much, His Excellency, Bapak Tantowi Yahya. It's very interesting. Now we just realized that we only focusing ourselves and we positioning ourselves as part of Asia, but we never realized that that's big opportunity. That's a big business opportunity and market there in Pacific. As Prof. Aman also mentioned here, right? The research by the Ekman Institute, that Indonesia actually is mixed between Homo sapiens, Polynesia, and Austronesia. So genetically, right, we are part of the Pacific Island. So very interesting, Prof. Aman, about the explanation. Yeah. All right. So we're talking about the continent. So is Indonesia part of the Australasia or part of Asia? If we're talking about this, so part Indonesia may be as part of Australasia. Is that correct? Yeah, that's one, the eastern part of Indonesia, because when we talk about the physical, about the genetic, is look like more on the part of the Australasia people. Yeah. Okay. I think now I'm going to open the question and answer. First, I give like 3 opportunity first. Anyone? Just raise your hand. Okay.
Bu Yulita.
Yeah.
I think before you open the forum, I would like to answer the provoking question from Pak Sates Moore.
Oh, Pak Sates. Okay. All right, Pak Sates. Oh, Pak Sates, yes. All right. Yes. Yes. Okay, Pak Sates.
It's a very provoking question. So by promoting
right,
Indonesia as a part of Pacific, does it risk business prospect with ASEAN? I don't think so, Pak. So it's a compliment that Indonesia becomes other part or becomes other regions of the world. And we have capitals, like I said earlier, the geographic and demographic facts that cannot be argued. Okay, make the world, not only us, make the world say, yes, Indonesia is part of the Pacific. And second, we are not playing politics in the Pacific. No politics at all. We are only talking about business. We are talking about human capacity building, and we are talking about other economic opportunities which have not been explored to the max. So that is the presence of Indonesia. And the third one, why it becomes significant to ASEAN. If our mission is successful, then we become the hub for ASEAN countries to penetrate the Pacific and vice versa.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Pak.
Thank you, Pa. And then we have also a question from Professor Aman here. His Excellency Ambassador Tantowi Yahya. How this cultural approach can be used to capitalize in penetrating Pacific Island economy?
Okay, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
Speaking about global economy or global business or international business, there is a difference. Global business is when you international brand, in order to penetrate the market, then you open up production facilities. But when we are in the international business, you don't have to open up production facilities. You just produce the product wherever you are, and then export them and then sell them abroad. I guess that is the significant difference between global economy and international economy. Now, I would like to use the word global economy or global business for the Pacific countries. So instead of exporting our product to those small economies or small countries, we set up factory there. We set up production companies in those countries, and it's not costly. So, for instance, a country like Samoa, they are very rich in natural resources, like the cassava, and then the foods that become their staples. They have a surplus, okay, and they don't know how to consume them anymore. To market them, they have a difficulty in reaching countries who are very strict, like New Zealand and Australia. So what we have in mind is that we set up small, simple factories in those countries, and then we process all the local foods and local fruits there, and then we we make them into crisps, we make them into chips, and then we market them locally, domestically in the domestic market, and to the nearing island countries. So I think this is the opportunity for us to penetrate business in the small countries which have difficulty in transportations and also in connectivity. Second, Pacific Island countries is a big market for communication, Pak. So communication has always been a big problem as well for most of the Pacific Island countries. So you can imagine if there is a telecommunication company from Indonesia, put up an investment there and do a telecommunications network there that covers the whole Pacific, that not only they will thank us, but we leave legacy in those countries. And the third one is the transportations. Connectivity, again, has been a big issue in the Pacific. To fly from one island country to another, whose distance is only 1,000 kilometers away, you have to wait for a week because there is no daily flight. You have to wait, because they serve only 2 or 3 times daily. So I'm talking about like Lion Air, Air Asia, why don't they serve Pacific, become the flight hoppers that fly from one island to another? So I see that as big opportunities for us.
Sorry, Bu Ita.
Yeah, Prof. Aman. Yeah, please.
I know. I think I need to meet Pak Tantowi to spend more time to discuss. My question actually is asking about strategy, Pak. I know that you have been explaining the very many things that as a perspective and also technical things, but the strategy, for example, how Korea affecting Indonesian as a market through culture. So, everybody now about the K-pop, but also all the products of Korea, foods, culinary, clothing, and merchandise, everything. Japan also similar thing. Thailand is having the strategy as the kitchen of the world. So I'm thinking when probably as the endpoint ambassador, if we would like to consider this as one of the input, because I was ambassador in UNESCO and my deputy is Ambassador Jose Tavares. So, you know, helping me at the time. So I think this is a strategy as you're working as the special envoy to promote Indonesian culture as the entry point. As we said, they have the basic similarity, commonalities of the genetic and the DNA and everything, behavior, and probably also our custom and everything. So we through that, what do you call it, the soft diplomacy, then we can encourage it and have the impact on the economics, on other bilateral relation with all those countries. That's very my small point, Pak. Thank you. A lot of questions from the audience. Please, you have to entertain also in all those questions. Thank you, Wita.
Thank you, Prof. Ahmad. It's become more and more interesting. Yeah, that we have a former ambassador here and we have an ambassador here. So it's become very, very interesting. And so us as the attendee here could listen like sharing experience. Okay, I'm reading now one question from Bapak Saiful Hidayat. He is asking, what is the trade situation now? Is Indonesia surplus or minus compared to other Pacific countries?
Okay, Ibu Lita, if I can respond, Pak, what was your question, Pak?
Pak Saiful?
Bukan.
Which one? Which one?
Was so many intriguing questions here.
Right. Yes. Maybe you can choose yourself. Which one you
But
want to
who is
answer.
Galaxy A52s?
I don't know.
Who is Galaxy A?
No,
Can
but
you put your name there, Galaxy A52. Siapa tuh?
Yes, yeah. No. It's very interesting to talk about culture in the Pacific.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Yeah.
Culture has become integral part in the daily life of the people in the Pacific, just like in our people in the eastern parts of Indonesia. So if you go to Papua, especially you go to Maluku, most of the daily activities or communications are communicated through songs and dances, right? And this is exactly the same in all of the Pacific countries. So you're right, Pak. Jadi my entry point is music.
Yeah, exactly. That's all. Like.
Yeah.
Yes.
I forgot to tell that to you. So the advantage of having an ambassador who is also a musician and a singer fits the job in the Pacific. Because
the singing ambassador, asik nih.
What makes me pretty much easy to penetrate the market is that the music that I play, the country music, is actually the Pacific music. You know, if you know the story of a country music is the merge of Irish, Germans, Swedes, and then brought by the immigrants to America, and they blend them and then make them into a country music in the early form. And then Hawaii came into being. Hawaii became the 50th state of America. Then Hawaii contributed an instrument to the country music, which is called Hawaiian guitar or steel guitar. Now the presence or the insertions of Hawaiian steel guitar in the country music, that what makes country music like it sounds today. So country music sounds very, very Pacific. And my music, I mean, the music that I play, the songs that I sing, the Indonesian country song, which sounds pretty much like the Pacific song. So they like it so much. And yeah, it became a good entry point for me to penetrate the heart and the mind of the people in the Pacific. But can we read the question because it's interesting? Tadi, what was the question that you said?
Okay, the first one is from Saiful Hidayat. They're talking about the trading balance between Indonesia and those countries in Pacific countries. Is that surplus or minus compared to those countries in Pacific?
Okay, our trade target is 40 trillion rupiah, or 4 billion US dollars, New Zealand dollars, ya, 40 triliun rupiah. When I was arriving in New Zealand back in 2017, the gap was pretty wide. Our trade to New Zealand was only 1.7 billion. Okay, 1.7 billion. So we enjoy a deficit to New Zealand, and then after 4 years, we managed to equalize, so to say, the trade balance with a little gap. So when I left that country in 2021, our balance was already 2 billion over, so almost 50-50. And in fact, if you combine a service into the trade, actually we are surplus. Why? Because we had more New Zealand tourists coming to Indonesia than Indonesian tourists going to New Zealand. So we enjoy surplus if you combine service and trade. Yeah. But if you take only trade, our balance is about 2 billion. If you combine the trade of those two countries, our trade balance is 3.8 or 3.5 billion, atau sudah hampir 35 triliun, from the target of 40 trillion which we have to achieve by 2024. So pretty promising. Yeah, why we can scale up our trade? Because we start exporting high-tech products, yeah, like the transformer, yeah, electric transformer, yeah, things like kemudian itu gerbong kereta api. That what makes us escalate the trade value to New Zealand.
Thank you so much, Bapak Tantowi Yahya. Next, we have question from, I don't know, from Galaxy A52. I don't know, it's just like promoting one brand here. Yeah? I don't know. Okay. All right. The question is about is there any institution or governing body or organization that would help the Indonesian business want to take the opportunity to export to those Pacific Islands?
We don't have a bilateral trade agreement with New Zealand because we are happy with the Australia, New Zealand, Australia, ASEAN, New Zealand trade agreement. For us, is good enough. So we work under that umbrella. We don't have any significance in building up bilateral trade agreement with Australia, with New Zealand so far.
Okay, thank you so much, Bapak Tantowi Yahya. I think from Dewi, this is from Dewi Hairani that's talking about flight connection. I think that's already mentioned by His Excellency Bapak Tantowi Yahya. His question is regarding connection tourism to Eastern Indonesia from Pacific Island. Will Indonesia improve the infrastructure in terms of the accommodation, such as direct flight to this beautiful island like Morotai, Ternate, or Raja Ampat? Before
COVID, Bali especially. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So before COVID, in early 2020, Bali was becoming more and more popular for the New Zealand up tourist or upscale market, upscale tourists. We managed to have 150,000 New Zealanders coming to Indonesia, especially Bali. That's what a big increase from the 3 years before, which was only half of it, which was only 70,000. The main reasons behind that incredible increase is the direct flight made by Emirates, Qantas, and also Air New Zealand that flew from Auckland to Denpasar. And also we have other flights, a routine flight of Singapore Airlines that fly the New Zealanders from three big cities in New Zealand, namely Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch, but through Singapore. So the contribution of those direct and semi-direct flights to Indonesia, especially to Bali, contributed a big increase of total number of New Zealanders coming to Indonesia. So when talking about the favorite destination in tourism, key factor number one has always been direct flight.
Yeah.
No matter how beautiful your country is, but if you have to keep changing the flights every now and then, that destination will become easily forgotten or sidelined. But no matter how far you are, but when you have a direct flight, then your destination becomes a favorite destination, and that's what happened to Indonesia. So when the international routes are resumed again, we are very optimistic that we have more and more New Zealanders and also people from other Pacific Island countries to visit Indonesia, not only to Bali, but also to other destinations in Indonesia. Now, how about the prospect of other destinations in Indonesia? They are also in the radar of the New Zealand tourists. Some of them, really want to visit Nusa Tenggara, especially now we have the Mandalika, GT Sport. Everybody in the Pacific is talking about that. So the entry point will always be Bali, and then from there they will go to Mandalika and probably to other island as well. I'm very interested in the words put by Pak Aman about Ambon being the only UNESCO city of music in Asia and Africa. We have to capitalize that. We have to promote this, especially for the New Zealanders, the Kiwis, who are very much close to music. They love music, and there is no destination in the Asia Pacific that offers music as the main attraction. I think this is a big homework for us, as well as create a big opportunity for us to sell even more the eastern parts of Indonesia.
Okay, thank you so much, Tantowi Yahya. So we're talking about the music, right, and the business. Okay, that is very interesting that you mentioned that how music could penetrate the market. Okay, we have a time until 10:30, so we only have 7 minutes. So I want some of you that ask the direct question, because I saw some question here. Is any of you want to ask a direct question?
Open mic, direct.
Open mic, yeah.
To Pak Tantowi Yahya.
Direct to
Go
Pak
ahead.
Tantowi, yeah, like direct communication that instead of type in the chat room. Okay, Ahmad Hanif. Oh, that's a lot. Okay, Julius first. Okay,
Yeah,
Julius. Yes. Okay.
basically, I asked these questions in the chat there. I see that the island actually is divided into Melanesian and Polynesians and such. And how are they actually different, yeah, Pak, in terms of the cultural, yeah? If there is any difference or not, gitu, Pak?
Wow, great question, which actually takes 2 days for me to explain the whole thing. But let me concise that. So Melanesians have dark skin. Melanesia are two Latin words. So Mela is black, Nesia is nation, so black nations. So the character is very simple to see. They have black skin and then curly hair. While Polynesia, poly means many, and the nation is nation. So the people or the countries scattered in many nations. So they call it polynations or many nations. So the characters that we can see easily, they have lighter skin colors, and not all of the hairs are curly. Some have straight hairs. And Micronesia, micro mean small, Nesia mean nations, so small nation. So those are the people that live in a very small islands. So if you see the map, you can't see the islands unless you enlarge them, because they are comprised of atoll islands, and this group of countries are they have a problem with the sea level rise. They are prone to be sunken in 20 or 30 years from now. And the people of Micronesia is just like our people in the Manado. So they look like Asia, because some of them are actually migrants from Manila, from the Philippines. So they look like ASEAN, yeah. But they are all the Pacific nations. So in terms of their habit and culture, the Melanesian people are actually the Papuan people or entity people, and the Polynesian people are actually our Malukunis, Ambonis, yeah. And the Micronesia, I can easily say our people that live in the northern Sulawesi. Now, speaking about habit and culture, the Melanesian people are called land people. So they make a living from being a farmer, you know. So they maximize the land to support their lives, and they become they are not familiar to strangers, to foreigners. So sometimes they are very hostile to strangers, to foreigners, and they like to be among themselves. So they group themselves among them and become so separated from the other community. While the Polynesians are the people that live on the sea. Most of them, you know, are good sailors, good fishermen, you know, and they travel to all over the world. Sama seperti orang Ambon kita, they, you know, their spread is all over Indonesia compared to our Papuan brothers and sisters, because they are bangsa penjelajah, perantau, yeah. And Micronesia, because they are migrants, they can live anywhere, and they make a living from both land resources and also from the ocean resources. I think these are the concise explanation of the peoples in the Pacific.
Okay, thank you so much, Bapak Tantowi. It's a very holistic answer. If we saw the animation movie by Disney, it's Moana. I believe that she's Polynesian, yeah. Polynesian,
That's
I believe.
Polynesian. You're right. That's Polynesian.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Okay, I just give one more question. It's from Iskandar, right? You asked a question, right? Yeah, okay. You're the last question for today. Yes?
Yes, Bu. Yeah. So I would like to ask to Pak Tantowi Yahya, what is our Indonesian goal for Indonesian roadmap for the Pacific countries? And then, like Pak Tantowi Yahya said, that the Pacific countries is very far away. And is there any country support to is doing business in there? Maybe like tax facility or something like that to attract more people to doing business in there?
Our goal is to become integral part of the Pacific. We want to be recognized as part of the Pacific, and we start gaining them right now. I can say that because if you open newspapers in New Zealand and other countries, Indonesian news is now classified as the Pacific news. So we are in the column of the Pacific. I think it's a big achievement. So before we were always associated with the Asia, but the news about Indonesia is now in the column under the Pacific. I think so. I think it's the recognitions, from the people and from the media. And a second, we want to enlarge. We want to expand our market. Like I said earlier, 30 million people that lives in the Pacific is still a big market. If we don't grab them, we don't tap them, other peoples will do. And this is what is done by Thailand, by Vietnam, by Malaysia. Yeah, don't talk about China. Yeah, they have been tapping the market long time ago. And we have so many products, especially the consumer goods, the foods, yeah, noodles, yeah, and everything. The very simple food and snacks that can easily penetrate the market. It's small in number, but to me, when you are talking about export your goods, you're not only talking about business, but you're talking about the presence of your country. So the more products in the racks of the supermarket of a country, the more familiar the people of your country. So when they say made in Indonesia, it creates awareness on our country, and it has multiplier effect. From knowing, they learn about our country, and at the end of the day, they want to visit our country. After visiting our country, they like it and they love our country, and they become Indonesianists. So there's a long term of that's all start from trade.
All right, I think that the last question for today is already 10:31. Thank you so much, His Excellency Bapak Tantowi Yahya. It's very great sharing, and then we do not have well, a lot of the what do you call listening or like sharing like this about the Pacific Island. So that's very interesting. I saw like a lot of our students and also other candidates asking the question. So today the maximum attendees are 88 people, which is like big for Saturday morning during Ramadan time. Yeah, it's been very interesting. Yeah. Before that, we like to take a picture first. Okay, I'm gonna start with the
Okay, open your camera,
okay, open
everyone.
camera. Yes.
So we'll take picture with Pak Tantowi Yahya, our ambassador for roving ambassador ya Pak ya,
Yeah,
to Pacific Islander, and then our artists, celebrities. Okay.
Yes. All right. So first, 1, 2, 3, and then Buzila, can you say help me as well, Buzila? Okay, I'm
Yes,
taking.
Ibu.
Yeah, this is the second.
Okay, there are 4 slides. Slide 1, 1, 2, 3. Okay, slides. Next slide, slide 2, 1, 2, 3. Third slide, 1, 2, 3.
kayaknya tahan nafas semua nih.
Next slide, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you, Bita.
Okay.
Thank you, Buzila.
So
Please,
we will
Kapan-kapan kita nge-jam, Pak.
Yeah.
give a big applause
Kita
to Pak Tantowi
punya band
Yahya.
di
Kapan-kapan datang ke IPMI, Pak Aman bisa main band, saya bisa nyanyi juga sedikit-sedikit, Pak, bisa duet nanti. Nah, at the closing of this session, we'll hear the song by Pak Tantowi Yahya. Mana tadi songnya itu? Ini dia. Oke, mana? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the song, country song from Sulawesi Utara by Pak Tantowi Yahya. Asik.
Cuma kita seingat.
Asik.
Jangan sampai
Dari Micronesian.
Tunggu kita mau pulang, mau datang ambil.
Nah, lagunya Polo Pak Citra, artinya Indonesia dan Pacific Islander akan saling berpelukan. Asik.
Cium Pak kita.
Saya pamit dulu ya. Terima kasih semuanya.
Oke, terima kasih Pak Tantowi.
Nice weekend.
Orang dua baku dapat, bukan untuk mau berpisah. Oh, lupa kita.
The Saturday class, stay here ya. There will be continuation of the class. The rest of you, if you are not attending the Saturday class of the Global Economy International Business, you can leave. Yeah.
Saya pamit ya.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
See you next weekend. Saturday class, thank you. After this song, we'll continue the class.
Ini yang terakhir, orang dua baku dapat, bukan untuk obat pisah. Lupa kita sayang.
Ya Bapak Ibu,
Siapa kita sayang.
yang bagian daripada kelas hari ini.
Ini yang terakhir, orang dua baku dapat,
Cara kita dari hari ini selesai. Thank you. Jadi Bapak Ibu, silakan ya terima kasih banyak. We having very great session today. Pak Roy, you're going to continue. We'll just take a break a little bit.
Yeah, take a break. Take a 5 minutes break lah.
5 minutes.
After
break.
that,
Alright.
there will be a presentation session of
Alright.
your the result of your discussion. Yeah. Okay.